everyone, and welcome to the House of Talk About Life. And you are viewing this on YouTube, and you also are able to listening into podcasting. And because we are all in a digital world right now, time is not relevant. You can be listening it today, tomorrow, 1 month, 1 year, or 10 years later. It's going to be out there for time mortality. So time is actually non-existent in the virtual world. And today I'd like to invite Kimberly from the US, and she's going to talk about her experience and her motivation in being a podcaster. And then we're going to go into the topic of today, a pandemic in your country or pandemic in my country. And for the viewers who are new to Talk About Life is a platform either in YouTube or podcast that it gives a platform to the ordinary people to talk about the issues that's closest to your heart in a very honest, open manner, in a very respectful manner, and that it is a platform that is non-judgmental. To us, our opinions value, right? Whatever it is. It's like it is to me, it is important to me, and this is a platform whereby people tell the world this is important to me, and this means a lot to me, and I want you to know that. So this is so much as the motivation and the mission of Talk About Life. So hi, Kimberly from the US.
Hello.
Kimberly, would you tell us where you're from, what time zone you are? In Singapore, we are now in 6th of November, 1 p.m. on Friday afternoon. Would you tell us where you are and what time zone you are? And then
Sure. Okay. First of all, my name is Kimberly. I won't give out my last name because I want to be somewhat anonymous. I am in the United States, more specifically in the west coast of the United States. Yeah. It is November 5th, Thursday evening. It is 9:07 p.m. for me.
Wonderful.
Yep. A little thing of
you being a podcaster. Why? I see there's such a huge movement of podcasting in the US, and I'm really surprised because I'm a new podcaster. I just joined it like 2 weeks ago. Tell us.
Okay, so as far as the movement of podcasting goes, I think in the United States, it's a little bit more easier for people to create a platform to speak. And the really interesting thing about podcasting is you don't need a lot of stuff to get started. All you need is a computer to be able to record and a microphone. And it doesn't have to be a fancy microphone like the one I have, which is really not that fancy. It's maybe like $50 American dollars. It could also be headphones like the ones that I'm currently wearing, which came free with my cell phone when I bought it. So, or cheap $10 headphones as long as it has a microphone, and you can create more from that, and you don't even need a computer. You can actually just use your phone. For me, I can pull out my phone right here, start the voice recorder app, and just start talking into it. But to do it collaboratively, you need to do a little bit more research, figure out what programs are there to be able to get started. But the reason I started podcasting is I've been wanting to create my own platform and a place for me to speak. And I've always been nervous about speaking out. I'm very shy, very timid, but I have so many ideas and thoughts that I want to be able to express myself. And I decided to say, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and start a podcast. Even if no one listens to it, I'm going to get my voice out there. And I started the podcast that I have with my sister, and I'm planning on starting some more, one by myself, where I just get out of my comfort zone of talking to myself, with myself, if that makes sense. And maybe start one completely with a stranger to get to know them in the, in the virtual space without having to, yes, somewhere in the universe.
Like
and
me,
I think,
and you.
Yes, and I think one of the really good things about podcasting is you don't have to reveal much about who you are. I don't have to post my face everywhere. I just have to post my voice. And if I stutter a lot, which happens so much, I end up embracing it. And I'm pretty sure I will end up stuttering a lot. I will say, I am in a area where people say dude and like a lot. And I'm pretty sure when you listen over this again, you'll hear that. I won't notice it because I'm used to it. But it's interesting to see how the vernacular of everyone is different throughout the world. So I think that's one good thing about podcasting.
Yeah, and And I really applaud that. And I applaud it because I see it from a macro perspective, like what you say. It's really like a democratizing of the world. You know, technology has democratized the world because people are able to tap onto this frequency that is free, accessible to anyone, and anyone usually does have a handphone now, and it doesn't cost anything. And for us to become a real world community, I think the technology has made it there. And this wave that I'm seeing in America shocks me because when I looked at this, and before that, I'm not a podcaster, but even then, this is my fourth year in doing YouTube. I'm just so shocked that this huge movement that people find their voices in the podcasting world. And even like yesterday, I was surfing. Okay, Michelle Obama, she has a new podcasting, and Barack Obama is just by the side talking, and she's out there doing her first episode, and I'm looking at that. It's like, wow, we are on par with these people, the presidents of the world. And it is almost like bringing this whole line of existence to one. You look at it, it is so powerful, and yet it is so needed. And it just means that we are the same, right? You and I, the presidents, the kings, the royalties, the monarchies, and even people like in the Sahara Desert, even people like in the street, even people like in the very basic or below the poverty line, they probably have access, and everyone's life now becomes equal. I mean, how beautiful it is that now you've discovered that, hey, the frequency that everybody tunes in, isn't that what we have been talking about for time, for a long time? And that, but now it's really like it's becoming real because we are able to tap onto, hey, like what you say, your voice is important, your existence is important,
Mm-hmm.
and no one can say you are not important. You are important to you. Your life is important. When we go to the deathbed, we are
Mm-hmm.
the same, aren't we? That last breath that we take, it is as important as the Fortune 500 CEO. It is as important as, okay, the king and the Markle, Meghan Markle. It is as important as the Prince Harrys of the world. I mean, don't you see that we are important? I think it kind of puts that into perspective, that well, suddenly we all wake up to this pandemic, that because we've got so much free time, like what you say, our lives are important as so much as people who are fighting the war out there in the pandemic. Thank you once again, Kimberly, for being my guest in my show, in YouTube and also in podcast. I
Mm-hmm.
value your existence. I value your voice in my podcast. I value you. I value your opinion. I value your existence, not just because you're just a voice of that adds to my content, no. But I value whomever who's out there because you mean something to the world, not only to your family, not only to your sister who is your podcaster co-buddy, Um, but I think that because we found this existence, we found that, hey, um, we mean a lot to the world because we are one of the brick and mortar that builds this humanity. How beautiful it is, like podcasting, like what you say is like, hey, you've got so much things that you want to share to the world, but this is something that you don't have to disclose where you are, whom you are, your identity, because that is not important, but because being in existence by itself is important. How beautiful it is, Kimberly. What do you think?
It's amazing.
It
It's
is
absolutely
amazing.
amazing
Yeah, and
because
when I see the American podcasting movement is like, oh my God, this is what the people are doing. There's so many people, and you know that this is the first step of entrepreneurship.
I did
Do you
not know
see it
that.
that way? Because when I was thinking about it, I'm looking at, wow, people are they can podcast,
Mm-hmm.
can find your niche. You're competing with other podcasters. You're in this marketplace of competition to get your listeners, your viewers, and you have this opportunity to gain your clients who are your viewers and to have your subscribers or followers, and then you can build your brand, and
Yeah,
then
that's
you
true.
eventually sell your brand and your products. Isn't that part of
I
entrepreneurship? Do you
think
see
I
it that
see it
way?
in a way of, for me, I see it as a sense of escape, and I see it as a sense to vent or to express myself. I don't see it as a brand, but I can see it potentially growing. I think because I'm still such a small podcaster, I think I have been podcasting a little over a month. I'm still relatively new. For me, it's just a way to express myself and a way for my sister to express herself and for both of us to share our piece and vocalize the things that are on our minds, whether it is the problem with the pandemic, whether it is something that we're personally dealing with. And we want to create a community with whoever is listening with us. While we don't know where we are going in our life, I can be working at a full-time job somewhere and still not knowing what my purpose in life is, while my sister has a full idea of what she wants to do with her life, but doesn't know what kind of job it falls into. Like our identity, we are trying to figure out our identity with each other in public to everyone else through the podcast. And I feel like that's something that's really relatable. So maybe down the line, we will create it into a brand. But right now, it's just us expressing ourselves and figuring out who we are with ourselves
Yeah,
and
I
to
really
each other.
commend you. And for that, thumbs up,
Thank
double
you.
thumbs up. And you are right to say that it's relatable, and because um, and this relatability is relatable regardless where you are in the world.
Yeah.
People are finding their ways in life. People are finding their way of existence in a career, in their jobs, who they are, where they're
Mm-hmm.
heading. It's going to be all these issues that everyone faces in this world. How beautiful it is, if you are going through that. And I'm sure people in Singapore are also sharing the same issues with you, and
Yeah.
that's why it will grow. A person of your age group is the millennials, right? You're in the
Yes.
you're in this millennial age group, and that this millennial issue or anyone going through a different phase of their lives, they will face these issues, isn't it? No matter
Yes.
where you are, finding,
Regardless.
yeah,
Perfect.
maybe in a later part, it's going to be dating. It's going to
Yeah.
be like struggles with being identity in a relationship, finding a
Yeah.
footing, for example. These are things that everyone shares, and I commend you in sharing this very openly with your family, with your sister, with the world. And I'm sure, and I think a voice of yours means a lot. And more people
Mm-hmm.
should tune in, and more people should be sharing it. And then that's where the world really comes together as one. How beautiful it is. Kimberly, I just
Yeah.
want to also bring you to this topic of us, the pandemic. Tell us about the current situation that where you are, in a non-confidential way, where you are. You don't have to identify where you are in a spectrum whereby you are comfortable to describe the situation, the normalcy or non-normalcy, anxieties, fears, or whatever thing that has transpired in this short span of a few months. Tell us about the situation.
I think, okay, I am living in the United States. I'm not going to get more specific than that. The really interesting thing is it depends on every state. So the United States has a compile of 50 different states. And within every state, they have different regulations and different um, understandings. And the different amounts of people within every state that would follow the regulations that the country has. But in the state that I live in, they do have required facial coverings or masks every time you enter any of the stores. They are trying to enforce social distancing of 6 feet apart and no gatherings larger than 10 people. But I know that there are people trying to normalize that, and you can see it on social media who is following the regulations, who is not. At the same time, you can see people really longing for normalcy, wanting to be able to go out, wanting to get back to their usual routine. They're tired of being stuck at home all the time. And fortunately, I live in an area where the weather is really good. So it's easy for people to go outside. It's not snowing all the time. It's not raining all the time. It's relatively sunny almost all year round, with the exception of cloudy, rainy days. And it's just, there's like three different groups here in the United States, where there's a group who believe that the pandemic is something that's made up. And I don't fall into that group. I can hear certain relatives or certain family, friends or coworkers who think that this is a conspiracy just to get people to stop, I don't know, contributing to the economy or something along the lines of that. There's a group who is anxious or nervous. They have anxiety to go outside. I kind of fall into that. I don't want to leave my house at all. I don't want to put anyone in my family at risk. I leave the house maybe once a week, twice a week. I would go to the grocery store or go to the store just to leave the house for 20 minutes. Or I would pass by to get food at a fast food restaurant or something along the lines of that. But the moment I leave my house, I lock the door, I'm already wearing my facial covering and walking to my car. From the car, I'm wearing my facial covering, even if I'm in the car by myself. I don't know why. I'm kind of paranoid. But if I'm outside, maybe in the front yard, just over there without leaving my property, I would not be wearing my facial covering. So I fall into that. But at the same time, if I'm with some family members and I know that they haven't been, what's the word, exposing themselves, then I would be okay being around them without my facial covering. But it's been almost 7 months since I've seen my family members outside of my household. And if I do see them, I'm always wearing my facial covering unless I'm eating, which that's a different situation. Then there's the group that is longing for normalcy. They're kind of paranoid, but they've also been at risk with the pandemic, and they don't leave their house at all. They get their groceries delivered to them. They get everything delivered to them. So it's really interesting to see who falls under what category and how they deal with the pandemic.
Okay, clarify again, category three. Are they those who are tested positive or that they have been exposed that they self-quarantine? Are you talking about that?
No, in for category 3, it is people who are at risk, who probably have a low immune
The
system.
older, okay.
Yes, older or people who have immunity disorder, something that will make them most likely to get sick for anything. I know I live with my grandmother, who happens to be a person who can be at risk, and she's been here the entire time, only leaves when she has mandatory doctor visits, which I think has only happened 2 times since the pandemic lockdown.
For seven
But
months.
I'm in the 7 months, yes. And yeah, which is very long. After a while, you get tired of being in the same place all the time. And sometimes you get frustrated with your own family members, and other times you absolutely love them. Right now, I don't know where I stand.
Okay. Could you describe the numbers? You have not disclosed where you are, which is fine, which is good. Tell us the numbers.
I know that I don't have the number specifically. I am one of those people who gets a lot of anxiety paying attention to the statistics,
Yeah.
but I know that in the United States, the numbers are very high of people who are testing positive and of people who have passed away with it. Um, Oh, I wish I can pull them up so I can, let me see if I can pull them up.
No, but I do understand, I do know, and for the viewers who are listening in, because there's no time time concept in the internet. At this particular point in time, we're talking about 6th of November. America is about 9 million positive cases, and today or yesterday it has hit the record breaking of 100,008 cases tested within one day. And the rate of fatality has already hit 220,000 people who otherwise live. And also in every country, um, the way that they declare fatality is different. You know, it really depends on the rules of a particular hospital or a particular area or region, depending on the doctor also, how they actually declare. So this is the what we see officially that is out there. And this is the rate that we're talking about in the US. And of course, like you, the statistics scares me. And I think I belong to category two, like you.
Yeah, I think I did not know that it's hit 9 million. I knew that the number was really high. I
Yeah.
just didn't know how high because I don't want to pay attention to the statistics. I don't want to wrap my mind around it and think of who of those 9 million do I know personally in my life. And sometimes you don't know, and or you'll know through someone else who knows someone else who knows someone else. And the possibility of it being so close to you is terrifying. So I rather not focus on those numbers and
But
only
the,
pay
yeah, the
attention.
good thing is that out of the 9 million, a good proportion would have recovered.
Yeah.
This is what I'm trying to say. So sometimes the statistics, it kind of scares people, but people do forget that a good proportion of them would have recovered and they are not infectious. Of course, there's a period that they're infectious, and after that, they build certain months of immunity. So I hope
Mm-hmm.
that that doesn't scare you by telling you, how is your family coping in detail? Like how many family members do you have, and what kind of energy you have in a household? Because people do have conflicts, right? And
Yeah.
people do have, you hear a lot of news out there that people do flare up, which is quite normal
Mm-hmm.
because they're confined in such a small space for a long period of time with
Mm-hmm.
no fault of their own. Parents, children, people who are supposed to be working there in the house. Tell us and describe the household dynamic right now.
Okay, so the household dynamic, we are in a 3-bedroom home with 6 people, adults.
Mm.
One is a senior, about 90 plus years old. So it's a small home. Yeah, very small. The senior has her own bedroom. The parents have their own bedroom. And I have 2 siblings, and we share a room. So there's 3 full-grown adults in one bedroom. And it is very frustrating to find privacy, to find a sense of your own space, and quietness to be able to relax, because everyone's trying to either work, do homework. I'm a student and I work. Uh, my sister is a full-time student. My brother works and is also a full-time student. So there's 3 students trying to find a place to properly work, and we don't have a proper desk, we don't have a proper place for us to do that. And I don't want to say I'm complaining. We've learned to manage. We've been in this situation prior to the pandemic. It just is amplified during the pandemic because we were able to leave the house to go to school and study at school. We took advantage of public places where we can study, and we were able to just breathe, and being in the same confined area makes it really difficult.
Can you give maybe one or two specific examples whereby these fights or flare-ups occur?
I think the flare ups that occur, we are very, very fortunate that we get along and we are able to vocalize our concerns, that we don't physically fight, we don't argue really quickly. I think the flare ups that happen is if someone is in the living room trying to study and they get very loud while other people are trying to sleep. The schedules that we have are all very different. We have people who get up at 6 in the morning to go to work. We have people who get up at 8 in the morning to start school. We have people who start at 12 in the afternoon. And then all of the noise happening simultaneously is really, really difficult. And then there's times where classes run very late, where they're in the evening, when everyone's at home and we have to be really, really quiet and we can't. So that's where the flare-ups do tend to happen, is we're just not able to be at home comfortably. We have to take into consideration that someone else could hear us. So virtual learning has made it very difficult. Working remotely has made it difficult because we have to take into consideration everyone else's needs.
How often does this flare up occur?
I think it happens usually when we are the most stressed. So maybe closer to the end of the school semester, when all of the assignments are piling up to submit them. So last semester, America kind of runs in a semester basis. The spring semester began, I believe, end of January, early February, and ends mid to late May, early June. So that's where our semester ends, and the flare up usually peaks at that moment when we all have a lot of tests, we have a lot of essays to submit, and sometimes there's a lot of noise. Either someone's watching TV very loudly, our dogs keep barking at every little noise, someone's clinging and clanging, making noises in the kitchen, and we're trying to study. So we've all gotten to the point where we either put on headphones that are noise canceling to ignore everyone else, or we play our own music to be able to focus. That's when the flare-ups happen. Or the flare-ups can also happen when people want to just come home from work and be able to relax, and they can't because we are in a class, so they can't express themselves properly without people hearing or eavesdropping that are probably unmuted in a classroom. So it's usually those kind of things. Sometimes it happens once a week, sometimes it happens once every 3 months.
And kudos to you guys, because it's so tough to have
It is very tough.
Adults and
Yes.
school students doing all this under one roof. And you've described it with such clarity, right?
Yeah.
Is there a moment whereby people wanted to just give up?
All of us. We all wanted to give up. We still want to give up.
Yeah, I mean, that level of stress seems like it's it's already part of this family dynamic, uh, in that climate, the
Yep.
family climate, as opposed to pre-pandemic times, right?
Yeah.
Um, I would think that how long did you all get adjusted to like quickly get into that mode of like you all accepted it, and then you all have to live together, like 6 person under one roof, and then maintain that? How long did it take that, hey, this epiphany that, hey, I think we have to quickly get into it? How long did it take for you all to like go into that mode?
To get used to it, we've lived, all of us have lived in the same house all of our lives. In my late 20s, I've lived with my younger siblings forever. We've gotten used to that already. But when the United States, and specifically the school district that I work with, they initiated the stay-at-home order and lockdown, I want to say, in mid-March. So for me, it took about 2 weeks for the school to figure out what they wanted to do. They pushed our spring break earlier and then gave us a week off of school and work. That it took them 2 weeks to figure out how we were going to figure things out. My sister, who's in a different school district in a different campus, had to do all of her work remotely, and it was stressful for her because she had to write down all her notes on pieces of paper before and submit homework before and on paper, and then changing it to other things. The unfortunate stuff about that is that some of the work that she had previously handed in she didn't get it back because the professor has it in person, And the same goes with my brother. It took us I want to say about a month to get used to all of that. The thing that made it worse is we have people here who are not technologically savvy, and the transition to working remotely and doing things virtually was another added layer of stress, which made it a heavier burden to those who did know how to use technology, because they had to figure things out for themselves and then guide someone else to go through that. So I want to say a month for sure it took us to get accommodated to all of us being at home.
Okay, two things I want you to explain a little bit. One is about the stay-at-home study,
Mm-hmm.
the school that were asked to close, and also the lockdown. What kind of lockdown extent, and tell us the announcement, and how much time you all were given to lock yourselves down.
Uh, okay. So for me, let me double check my calendar. I remember writing this down prior to the pandemic when the World Organization announced the pandemic as a pandemic.
That was some.
I was at the gym
Yeah.
out in public on March 11th, which was a Wednesday, middle of the day. I had just gotten off of work, and schools apparently released announcements stating that there is a very, very high possibility that we will be moving remotely, but we weren't sure. It wasn't set in stone. On March 12th, when I came into work, we were we meaning myself and two other coworkers were coming up with a plan to transition our job virtually through Zoom, through Microsoft Teams, or other modes of communication. And on March 13th, I went to a wedding, which it was really not the greatest idea, but it wasn't enforced then. The stay-at-home order was enforced as of March 15th, which was a Sunday. And the lockdown basically stated that non-essential non-essential jobs and people have to stay at home.
So that happened like the formal announcement when they announced it, and they gave you how many days to
They
get into homes? They announced it on the
that's
15th.
where
They announced it on the 15th, right?
Yes, the 15th was when they started enforcing it. And
Oh, okay.
if you
It was made on the 13th,
on the 11th.
on the 11th, when the World Health
Yes.
Organization made some announcements, right?
Yes,
Okay,
the World Health
yeah. So you
Organization.
have got 11, and then your government or the regulators actually make your official announcement that this is going to happen on the
Mhm.
5th, on the
Yes, 15th.
15th, and on your 15th, all of you automatically went into lockdown. Am I right to say
Yeah.
that?
Yes, pretty much.
So during that time of the 15th, was there a lot of people who were disgruntled? People who
Yes.
refused to comply? Can you tell us a bit?
Yes. So a lot of people were very upset about having to adjust their schedules, having to figure out whether they are going to be working at home or not. And I think prior to that, there were a lot of people preparing for the pandemic to never leave their house for 2 weeks, I think is what the government has said. They said prepare at least 2 weeks worth of food or have stuff like that. Um, I know once the World Organization had announced that coronavirus is a global pandemic, my family rushed to the store to get whatever we could that we can store, whether it is rice that we can cook, beans, toilet paper, cleaning products, whatever we could. And I was one of those people who got anxious just seeing everything empty in the store. It seemed like people were preparing for the end of the world. And my parents have taken photos of how empty the stores were, and it's terrifying. And after 2 weeks, I went to the store for some reason. I don't remember what it was, but I went to the store for a quick errand, and everything was still empty, and everything was out of stock. Whatever you needed was out of stock, which was very stressful, and it was very overwhelming and very upsetting to see that people were hoarding a bunch of products that they don't probably need. That I saw a bunch of cars in the parking lot of the stores that I would go to filled to the brim with products. And I was just thinking, do you really need all of that stuff? Some of that stuff, someone else might really need it today, and you're taking care of that in your car.